Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the privilege of offering me this opportunity to discuss with you some of the works we've done. But what I intend to do here is just briefly describe the world as I see it now, contextualize, and then identify the problem as I see it, and see how we can move forward. It's fair to say that we live in a world of enormous revolutionary contradiction and great possibilities. On the one hand, we have a world in which we can produce food, weapons, and things that could change the world dramatically for better or worse. On the other hand, we have a world in which, in fact, poverty also is escalating at an astronomical rate. We have a world in which I can wear Indian attire, born in Africa, and grown up in the United States and England. In other words, we really essentially have a world which is a global village, not simply as a metaphor or expression, but a substantial reality, in which the actions of people in other parts of the world will affect us whether we like it or not. A breakup of the mad cow disease will affect us whether we like or not. It's sort of a world in which, in fact, in the last few years, I think science has demonstrated that indeed we have only one human family. Yet, paradoxically, we seem to bury our heads in the sand of what I call our own caves. A cave of nationality, a cave of race, a cave of religion, a cave of culture, and whatever you have. We have a world in which, in fact, less than 10% of human population consumes well over 25% of energy of the world. We have a world in which the richest continent on earth, Africa, is also paradoxically the poorest. This is the world in which we live, a world in which any of us can eat Chinese food at any moment, even though we're not in China, in which anyone can wear African attire, even if not in Africa. It is indeed a world which is a global village, not in the metaphorical sense as we used to say it in the African village. Yet our very action is contradictory to this scientific finding. What then are the problems if, in fact, the science demonstrates us so clearly that we are one human race, we live in an incredibly interdependent world, and we should therefore act towards one another as fellow human beings? I think we have spoken so much eloquently about globalization, by which we really mean not globalization in the real sense. We really mean that we have expanded the range of production, and we expanded dramatically the scale of maximization of profit, and this is what now drives us forward. It seems to me the central problem we face boils down to the issue of values and means. What values will inform our actions? What means do we use to embark upon actions that will transform the lives of others? And if the issue means and values, it seems to me that in universities and various institutions where we live, we also face a contradiction. On the one hand, science has demonstrated to us the great possibility that we could have, but somehow our institutions continue to train the minds of our young people to live in a world that is gone past or about to pass, instead of training their minds for a world that is being born, a world in which they're going to live in, a world in which is so interdependent. If one can really agree that perhaps I've described the problem essentially right, it seems to me that we've globalized commerce dramatically. what we have failed to do, what is so central to our mission, is how do we globalize moral, ethical values. That, I think, is a central problem we face. How do we globalize ethical values? Because if we had globalized ethical values, the blessing of science and technology would have made us all the better for it in the world. And if I suggest that perhaps we should think about ways in doing this, and it may require us to train our young people in particular to develop what I call vicarious imagination. By vicarious imagination, I mean, how do we get our students to imagine themselves to be in the position of others? Collectively, I think it is necessary for us to embark upon a project in which we encourage and cultivate in our young people what I call informed empathy. By informed empathy, I mean the capacity of understanding the positions, the problems, the dreams, and the values of other people. By that, I mean the spirit that actually places the interests of others along our own. By that, I mean the possible thinking at any moment that the woman being raped could be my sister, could be my mother, could be my auntie. That the child suffering in India or in Bangladesh, in Africa or in East London could be my own child. Unless we do this, we will continue to go the way we've gone. We will expand the range of production astronomically, but we will not solve the problem because we think it is, we think in binary sense. We, they, is their problem, not my problems. And unless we can imagine that we could be in the other person's position, because wherever I've gone, ladies and gentlemen, there are very few people who want to be poor. There are very few who want to go without food. There are very few people who would be repressed. And if it's the case, I think we need a great mission, a great project that would focus very sharply on cultivating informed empathy. But informed empathy will not work if we do not also couple it with a sense of humility and decency. Too often, I think, those of us who think we know better, we become very hegemonic. We don't create an environment of what I call reciprocal learning. That even the person who you think doesn't know knows so much, if only the environment could provide for that person. So I think the solution is to create an atmosphere of hope instead of despair, of imagination, instead of recoiling to our caves. And I believe that this ought to be based on moral and intellectual solidarity, on the principle of moral and intellectual solidarity. Unless we do base it on this, it will not work. And if we do this, I think we would be in a position, in my opinion, to inspire what I call practical idealism. That's what we need to transform the world, what I call practical idealism. You may think I'm a dreamer, but it turns out in the last 8 years, and I'll conclude, we have embarked on a project, the UNESCO chair has embarked on a project which has indeed proved to us that it's possible to build this world here on Earth. Each year, we host what we call a global intergenerational leadership training program. In August, for 10 days in the United States, we get 100 young people from all over the world, from about 80 countries, and they're together for 10 days. And I can tell you, after 10 days, when we leave, we cry because we love to be together. From different religious background, ideology, culture, and the rest of it. And we've now developed it that also we do it regionally, well, by regionally, continentally. The first one we did it in Africa, the Africa region, in Kigali. The second one we did last year, where Thomas Nance, my good friend, came to in Italy for Europe. And this year, in November, we'll do one in Thailand for Asia. And next year, we'll do one for South America and Latin America. Why do we do this? Because really, most of the progressive movement, unfortunately, focus only on the older generation. And I think that is a handicap. We cannot afford really to have a dialogue only among ourselves as older generation people, because the world does not end with us. The world must move on. But also importantly, no great movement has not benefited, have not really stood on the shoulder of those that come before. So we need this intergenerational dialogue, sharing, nurturing, because you cannot bring leaders overnight. Why do we focus on leaders? Because you have a domino impact, rather than if you go more broadly. So I think, ladies and gentlemen, I conclude to say that I think we live in an exciting period in human history, but also a period in history which paradoxically you have the largest, the widest gap between the haves and have-nots. And as a myth, it is precisely because we have globalized commerce, we have globalized maximization profit, but we have not globalized ethical values. Partly because we have not thought of the other people who suffer as our own brothers and sisters, mothers, uncles, and the rest of it. We've thought in binary terms. And as long as the suffering is with them, it's okay. So my challenge, I believe the challenge of democratic pluralism in the 21st century is to globalize ethical values and bring about a value system that encourages and nurtures what I call informed empathy on a global scale. That, in a small way, may move us forward. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.